Mia finally tied the knot, but it wasn't with me. From when we were 8 until I turned 28, I stuck by her side for 2 whole decades. The second she picked someone else, I turned into a total joke. Amidst everyone's sympathetic looks, I freaked out and confronted her but ended up getting smacked by a hanging lamp. After bouncing back, I decided to move on from the past. But then, out of nowhere, she traveled miles just to find me. I kicked myself for it. Don't bail on me, I thought. Some folks are just plain ungrateful. Jake, who used to hand out flyers with me, believed I was worth more. At the crowded mall, they set up an entire wedding scene. Surrounded by balloons and flowers, Ryan knelt down, his loving eyes locked on Mia right in front of him. With everyone cheering, Mia got teary-eyed and said yes to Ryan. In my past life, that scene hit me hard. I lost it and made a huge scene, questioning Mia in front of everyone. It was a mess. They were so perfect together on stage, and there I was in my old work uniform, causing chaos like a clown amidst their solid relationship. When that big light fixture came crashing down on me, I saw Ryan instantly protect Mia in his arms. 20 years of friendship and obsession just went down the drain. I was seriously hurt and couldn't get to the hospital in time. At that moment, Jake grabbed my hand tightly, his face full of worry. His look said he'd back me up if I wanted to confront her. I remembered how in my last life, when everyone else tried to bail, he risked himself to help me and ended up with a busted leg. My eyes welled up and I gave him a tight hug. He was taken aback for a sec, but then patted my back. There are tons of girls out there, don't be down, Jake said. I smiled and nodded. Yeah, you're right. I'm not sad anymore. A broke guy's love always messes with the heart, especially when someone once had it all. Some people just don't get it. Mia's friends stepped in to shut me down. Some even took Ryan's side. Dude, you're not good enough for her. Don't embarrass yourself. Only Ryan can lift Mia up. If you love her that much, how can you watch her struggle? Mia doesn't love you. She's just feeling obligated. Stop forcing it. Yeah, it's always been one-sided with me. Jake was pissed, ready to throw down, but I held him back. I saw Mia coming over and gave her a slight nod. Wishing you both the best, I said. She looked kinda surprised, eyes a bit confused. After that, I just walked out with Jake, leaving everyone stunned. What's up? Is he just playing hard to get? No way he'd let Mia go that easy. Drama's gonna follow. Ignoring the whispers behind us, I handed my work badge and flyers back to the store owner and left the mall. Mia's folks were my sponsors. I was a kid from a poor mountain village orphaned early, living with my grandpa. During a TV poverty aid event, young Mia chose me. When I was 8, after Grandpa passed, Mia's parents took me in. It was my first time in the city, nervously standing in Mia's mansion garden. My sneakers had a big hole with my toe sticking out. Feeling out of place, I kept my head down, but Mia's mom gave me a warm hug. From then on, I became part of Mia's family. Her parents were awesome, treating me better than their own kid. Sadly, good people don't last long. When I turned 18, Mia's parents lost their investment. Stressed by debt collectors, Mia's mom drove exhausted, crashed into a bridge railing, and plunged into the river. After they died, Mia was crushed until college acceptance letters came. We both got into decent local colleges, but it was short-lived joy. Loans could cover tuition, but we had to handle living expenses ourselves. Mia's parents' creditors kept hounding us. Both of us going to college became unrealistic. In her surprised eyes, I tore up my acceptance letter. Mia, you go to college. I'll work to support you. Without your folks, I wouldn't have left the mountains. I might have dropped out and married way earlier, living some unknown life now. If one of us had to sacrifice, I'd choose me. During your 4 years in college, for the other, I'd choose me. During her college years, Mia worked her tail off, always topping classes. She'd send me her scholarship money right away, telling me not to push myself so hard. I juggled 3 jobs, making lattes by day, working a store register at night, and doing promo gigs outside supermarkets. Even when I was sick, I skipped the doctor, just shoved myself back to work. No matter how hard I worked, I couldn't clear the debt Mia's parents left. Once, I was so beat, I passed out in some bushes, getting all scratched up. When I hobbled back to my basement apartment, Mia suddenly showed up and hugged me tight. Her tears soaked my scratched skin, burning painfully. "We'll have a good life someday. Your folks were great to me. Grandpa taught me never to be ungrateful. I never expected Mia to repay me for everything." But then she kissed me, and that long-buried seed inside me finally sprouted. The year Mia graduated, she landed a sweet job at Ryan's company. As she climbed the ranks, my burden eased a bit. I quit my night job and started studying at home, aiming to get a degree on my own. I wanted to close the gap between Mia and me. I tagged along to some of her friends' hangouts. They were having a blast chatting, and I couldn't find the right words. After coming back, I decided to catch up in my studies and match her pace. Jake, my coworker at the coffee shop, watched our story unfold. He whispered, "Ben, your girl Mia is not only pretty, but also super capable. There are countless guys eyeing her. You're not getting any younger. Make it official before it's too late." When Mia came home from work, I casually brought up marriage. She brushed it off, shifting the topic. I thought she was just too tired and stressed, so I didn't push. But what happened next blew my mind. A heavy rain hit over the weekend. After my shift, I rushed to bring Mia an umbrella as she worked late. Unexpectedly, I saw her leaving with a guy, both laughing and getting into a car. I didn't know when I dropped the umbrella, standing there soaked and lost. That night, I waited for hours until she came back past midnight. I asked where she'd been, and she, looking tired, claimed she was working late. "You're lying," I snapped. We had a nasty argument that day. She slammed the door and never came back. I called her countless times with no answer. I waited outside her office until a familiar face told me she went on a trip with the boss's son. A month later, she finally returned, but only to pack her stuff. Despite my stubborn attempts to stop her, she sighed and said, "Ben, even if we work our whole lives, we can't repay our parents' debts. I'm exhausted. I've worked so hard but can't compete with those who have connections. I can pull all-nighters and have my achievements snatched in a blink. I don't want this anymore. Can you understand?" I felt like I got hit by lightning, staring incredulously at Mia. I'd been comfortable growing up, but I'd struggled long enough these years. What I lost, I'd get back eventually. "Ben, you can't help me." She left decisively, her silhouette firm yet lonely. I hugged a blanket all night long. In the decade after Mia's parents died, we were inseparable. Then we became each other's world. Her life was full of people, but she was the only one I had. Not willing to give up, I looked for her time and again, trying to win her back. But she always dodged me. Jake saw how crushed I was and dragged me to hand out flyers at a new mall to distract me. We stumbled upon Mia's wedding, and I accidentally got killed by a falling light. Maybe I lived a pathetic life and met a pathetic end too. So heaven gave me a second chance. In my previous life, my world was all about Mia. This time, I wanted to live for myself. After calmly leaving the mall, I went home. I called my landlord to end the lease and started packing. I had lived in this bustling city for 20 years, thinking I'd never leave. But now, with nothing holding me back, I knew it was time to go. My baggage was simple, just a few clothes and shoes. Everything else was stuff Mia and I shared, and I didn't want any of it. As I opened the door, Mia was there, key in hand. I was kind of surprised. She looked down, eyeing my suitcase. "Where you headed?" "To Jake's for a few days." I answered honestly, leaving out the part where I didn't plan on coming back. "Let me take you," she sighed in relief, stepping forward. I gently stepped back, avoiding her move. She stiffened instantly, and I gave a somewhat ironic smile. I've walked these lonely roads at 2 a.m. for years now. It's nothing new. Facing Mia blocking the elevator, I asked, a bit exasperated, "Why are you here?" Her eyes grew uneasy. Her voice dropped. "Ben, stop making this hard. Stop showing up in front of Ryan. He's upset after finding out about us." "It's absurd," I thought, interrupting her. "Me being here today was just a mistake. Don't worry, I won't cling to you anymore." Mia's lip quivered, her smile forced as she swallowed back her words. Finally, she advised, I've already bought this place. Stay here and consider it compensation for the past years. Just forget about me. Before, I might have stubbornly said no or begged her not to leave. But having brushed death's doorstep, I let it go. She was the only family I had. Without her, I still had to live day by day, alone but alive, ready for a fresh start. I met her eyes with a calm gaze, agreeing easily. Sure, I promise. Can you let me pass now? Mia looked shocked, having prepared a bunch of reasons to convince me that ended up unnecessary. I quit my coffee shop job and stayed with Jake for a few days. He was happy to see me bounce back, but also felt bad for me. You gave so much to Mia all those years together, and she just moves on like that. Women, man, they're no good. I shrugged it off, no flicker of emotion inside. Mia's parents did so much for me, and I once risked my life for her. Let's just call it even and go our separate ways. No debts owed. Thinking about where to go next, I decided to return to the mountains and visit Grandpa's resting place. On the day I set out, Mia sent me a message. It was an electronic wedding invite. In the photo, they were both beaming with happiness. The next moment, the message was pulled back. The chat showed typing for a few minutes and then, sorry, sent to the wrong person. That wasn't like Mia. It must have been Ryan using her phone to make a point. I didn't care about such petty games. I closed the chat and blocked her on all platforms. Mia and Ryan's wedding was a grand affair. Their family flaunted wealth with a line of luxury cars clogging the street. Passers-by took countless videos, making it trend with mixed reactions. Some envied, saying, being born into a rich family is a skill, and she's got it. Others were jealous, thinking, born with nothing, but she fixed that with a rich husband. No worries for life. Some dug up old stories, like how the groom had a first love he dumped to climb social ladders. If true, that guy's something else. While I stumbled through mountain trails, clueless that I became the topic of online sympathy. Stepping off the minibus, endless green mountains stretched ahead. I left the city solo and returned alone, having journeyed through life, back to the start. I once suggested to Mia that we visit the mountains. She always said she was too busy. I waited and waited, but nothing happened. The mountains looked different now, with concrete roads running from the county to the mountain town. The minibus looked different now, with concrete roads running from the county to the mountain town. It stopped here as its final destination, no further transport. My village lay on an inconspicuous mountaintop. Life was tough in the mountains back then, with water and farming a constant struggle. The whole region had just one school in town. As a kid, I had to rise before dawn for school. Grandpa would carry me over a mountain and wade through a river to get to town. Now, with my suitcase in hand, I retraced those steps with a mix of nostalgia and anxiety. Help! A cry for help broke the silence, and I turned to see. The stone bridge at the town's entrance was quiet, and a small figure struggled in the river below. Seeing the splashing fade, I instinctively jumped in. The mountain river was freezing, but I gritted my teeth and swam toward the center. Grabbing the child from behind, I headed back. The commotion drew locals, and someone fetched a long bamboo pole to assist. With everyone's help, we managed to save the kid. Isn't this Lily's kid? Someone recognized the child and quickly took him to the local clinic. I sighed in relief, wringing out my soaked clothes, and found a place to stay in town. Before dawn the next day, I headed up the mountain. As I reached the top, the sun peeked over the horizon. Leaning against Grandpa's tombstone, I let out years of bottled-up grief, crying uncontrollably. Grandpa, I miss you. Back then, poverty brought us not only hardship, but also disease. I can barely remember my parents' faces now. The year they passed, there was a heavy snowstorm. Snow sealed off the mountains, leaving the area with no medicine or food, claiming many lives. TV stations reported the disaster, leading to widespread donations and aid campaigns. It was during such a campaign that I met Mia's parents. I was a scrawny, nondescript kid among many, while Mia stood out in a tidy little dress under the cameras. That public aid event was a blow to the dignity of the recipients. I was too young to know what pride meant, but I still wanted to run from those pitying looks. But I couldn't run. After my parents died, there was no breadwinner. Grandpa was old and frail. Our family was destitute. Uncles and relatives couldn't help us. They could barely help themselves. When survival is at stake, what's the use of pride? I couldn't afford to run. I had to win over the donors to survive with Grandpa. I approached Mia when she was alone, looking up at her. "Pick me. I'll always stay with you and never leave." These days, Jake calls often and sometimes mentions Mia. When you left, she kept parking her car outside the community. Then she realized something was off and confronted me about your whereabouts. No way I'd tell her. I let her have it instead. Unlike Jake's frustration, it all seemed kind of funny to me. Mia and I had drawn the line. She had a new family now. She always thought I was a mess. But now that I let go, she couldn't move on. Childhood promises stayed with me my whole life. In my last life, I never thought about leaving her. But in this one, I owe her nothing. On the way down the mountain, I unexpectedly ran into my uncle and his family. They warmly insisted I visit their home the next day, and I agreed. With time, young people from the mountains left for jobs elsewhere. As life improved, they brought their families with them. And those who didn't move away mostly relocated from the mountains to the small town at the base. During meals, my aunt kept piling food onto my plate. "You've grown into such a fine young man. Haven't seen you in years," she exclaimed. "Are you still living with the family that adopted you? And are you married yet?" When she learned I was still single, she patted her chest confidently. "Don't worry, Auntie here will sort you out. There are several nice girls in the village I can introduce you to," she insisted. Her enthusiastic attitude was a bit overwhelming, so I quickly waved my hands. No, it's okay." But she dismissed my protest. "Ben, I'm not trying to meddle, but boys your age usually have 2 kids by now. If your grandpa were alive, seeing you all alone would break his heart." Mentioning Grandpa made me emotional. In the countryside, it's common for boys like me who left school early to marry young. At my age, being single and without a degree is rare. No wonder Auntie's worried. Just as I was struggling to decline her help, a commotion erupted at the door. "Is Ben here?" A neatly dressed girl with sun-kissed skin and a bright, toothy smile appeared. She dropped 2 baskets of eggs in front of me, leaving me totally confused. "I'm the aunt of the kid you saved from drowning the other day. If it weren't for you, my niece might have been in big trouble. I'm here to say thank you." Lily sounded so sincere. My aunt gave us a surprised look and slapped her leg excitedly. "Wow, what a coincidence!" she exclaimed, then turned to whisper in my ear. "Lily's from the city. She's got a good heart and looks. I heard she graduated from a prestigious university. Lots of families have tried to connect with her, but she's turned them down. You two have this fate between you. Don't miss this chance." Seeing Auntie's gossiping gleam, I awkwardly excused myself. Lily followed me outside, and I was curious how she found me. She laughed and explained. "It wasn't hard. In a small town, most people know each other. New faces usually stay at the inn. I asked the innkeeper and found out you were the only new young guy checking in the day before yesterday." Dressed formally, I tugged at my tight collar. "You're here visiting family, right? I live at the town school. If you need help, feel free to reach out," she offered. Knowing I was staying short-term, Lily went with me to the inn. She seemed tight with the owner, and after a quick chat, they gave me a key and the address of a small courtyard house. "This is our family property. Since you're Lily's friend, we'll rent it to you cheap," the owner said. Overjoyed, I thanked them. Though Mia gifted me a house, old habits die hard, and I still tried to save money. Fortunately, things were affordable in the small town, and my savings should last me a while here. My uncle told me about a recent landslide near Grandpa's gravesite. Luckily, the area was uninhabited, so no one was hurt, but there's no telling if more slides could happen. After discussing with my uncle, we decided to choose a new burial spot for Grandpa. That's partly why I'm staying a while. Hearing about this, Lily kindly helped out a lot. Her casual vibe surprised me. She wore a white top, a plaid shirt, baggy pants, and canvas shoes. Quite different from a typical teacher's image. But she was efficient with the work. The small town had changed a lot since my childhood memories. Before I could decide on a new gravesite, Lily came with a map. She marked several potential spots for me. With the help of Uncle and Lily, the task was completed smoothly. Lily's niece, Bella, often tagged along, getting so dirty she looked like a little raccoon. She was tough-looking, resembling Lily in features, but with fairer skin. Running around town got her into trouble, often giving Lily a headache. Out of curiosity, I asked, "Where are her parents? Why are you looking after her?" "My sister and her husband are busy with work, so they leave her with me here since I'm teaching," Lily explained. Lily seemed like a city kid, warm, straightforward, polite, and worldly. Most importantly, she wasn't self-conscious or timid, embracing new experiences. I wondered why she was teaching here. She chuckled, touching the back of her head. "My dad was a volunteer teacher here. I wanted to see where he worked." Watching her face, a similar smile flashed through my memories. "Was it Mr. Adams? How's he doing now?" Lily's eyes lit up but quickly dimmed. "He passed away." Regretting my words, I apologized quickly. "Sorry, didn't mean to bring it up." She waved it off with a smile, brushing the matter aside. Because of Mr. Adams, Lily and I grew closer. When I was school-aged, Grandpa carried me over mountain paths to get me to school. Mr. Adams greeted me on my first day, teaching me to write my name. "Ben, as in handsome Ben," he'd say, laughing and handing me a small, dark piece of candy. I held it in my palm for a long time, and by the time I got home, it had melted into a gooey mess. Grandpa pushed my hand back, signaling for me to eat it myself. I gingerly licked my palm. The taste was bitter, but it felt sweet inside. Back in the day, a lot of young teachers came to teach in the mountain area, but many left too. Most just came and went, and I didn't even get to recognize their faces before they left. But he stuck around for a long time, even until I was taken in by Mia's family. He still didn't leave. Once I got to know Lily better, she occasionally invited me to help out at the school. The kids from the town all studied there, but compared to the past, there were way fewer of them. Lily said, "It's a necessary sign of societal progress. It's actually a good thing showing fewer kids are separated from their parents now." There weren't many teachers at the school, and Lily handled most of the subjects on her own. When she got too busy, she'd ask me to supervise the students with their homework. I awkwardly shook my head, embarrassed I didn't study much. I'm afraid I'd mess things up for the kids. She just laughed and encouraged me. "You won't know until you try. I heard you were pretty good back in the day. This should be a piece of cake for you." I had no idea where her blind faith in me came from, and I got all flustered, put on the spot. But lucky for me, I had studied hard back then. Picking up the knowledge I hadn't touched for years wasn't totally unfamiliar. The more time I spent with the kids, the longer I stayed in the town. If it weren't for Jake occasionally mentioning her on the phone, I'd have almost forgotten about Mia. Seems like Ryan's company is in some trouble. There are rumors their projects were obtained through shady means and have uncovered a lot of old scandals. He hesitated for a moment, but then said it. "Ben, lately Mia's been hanging around below my building. Looks like she's waiting for you to come back." Thinking about the days spent with Mia felt like something from a past life. Lost in thought, a shy little boy came up to me in the classroom and placed a freshly washed peach into my palm. "Mr. Ben, try it. It's really sweet." His pure smile wiped away the gloom in my heart instantly, and watching his bashful figure run off, I couldn't help but smile. As I picked up the textbooks these days, I suddenly thought of the diploma I didn't get in my previous life. Back then, I needed it hoping to get closer to Mia. But now, the obsession with the diploma had faded, and what reignited within me was a longing for college. Lily sometimes told me stories from her college days up north, and how different it was from our southern town. But the similarities, the liveliness, the brightness, the allure, they left you yearning. I remembered accompanying Mia to college, watching the brightly lit library and the students walking back to the dorms in groups. If I said I wasn't envious, it would be a lie. Whenever Mia looked at me apologetically, I'd just pretend not to care. At first, she tried to teach me things she was learning in college. But I was too busy working, trying to earn money, to focus on studying. Later, she thought I wasn't interested and got too busy with her own studies, so it just got brushed aside. But Think about it. I used to be a good student too, got into a decent college. How could I not want to be a better person and strive for a better future? Yet, those desires were suppressed by reality, buried deep inside. Even I had convinced myself otherwise. The townsfolk brought a jug of homemade plum wine. Lily, not knowing its strength, drank too much. She ended up holding on to the big tree outside the classroom, talking nonsense. Luckily, the students had already gone home. Otherwise, if they'd seen her like this, she wouldn't have dared to show her face the next day. After getting Bella to wash up and go to sleep, I went to find her. Drunk Lily looked sweet but acted rebelliously. She didn't want to go back to sleep but dragged me all the way to the bus stop at the edge of town, pointing at the empty waiting area. When I was a kid, my dad was hardly ever home. I missed him a lot. My sister said when I grew up, I could go and find him. The first time I came here looking for my dad, I waited all day until midnight before he came to pick me up. I was just starting middle school at that time, traveled a long way all by myself hoping to see him, only to be hit with disappointment. Later on, in a fit of rebellion, I went far away for college and refused to come back after graduation. During our occasional phone calls, I'd hang up impatiently, getting an earful from my mom for it. I never talked to him properly, so when he fell ill, he didn't even tell me. When he passed away, I was out of town on a business trip. By the time I rushed back, he was already gone. I didn't get to see him one last time. As she talked, Lily seemed to sober up a bit. She sat down on the ground, hugging her knees and burying her head in them. It's great that you still remember him, that someone still remembers him. The town was silent, and the sound of sobbing slowly started to rise in my ears. Before I knew it, the moon had come out. I gently patted her shoulder. It's not just me who remembers him. All the kids he ever taught will remember him too. Back in the day, a lot of people tried to get Mr. Adams to leave with them, but he gently yet firmly refused. Even though families with better conditions had started moving out of the mountains, there were still those who couldn't. And those kids needed an education too. Especially in these impoverished areas, the kids have to work hard to change their destiny and leave the mountains. All I can do is promise never to leave as long as there's one kid who hasn't made it out yet. Back then, I didn't know the sacrifices he made for that decision. Seeing the vulnerable Lily now, I truly understood how great he was. Mr. Adams may not have been the perfect father, but he was undoubtedly the greatest one. The next day, after sleeping off the booze, Lily saw me and looked a bit embarrassed for once. She slowly walked over, trying to find the words. I drank a lot yesterday. I didn't do anything weird. Did I? I playfully teased her a bit. Oh, you did? She was shocked. No way. What did I do? Well, you hugged that tree at the station and insisted on taking it home. Lily slapped her forehead in frustration and covered her face. I laughed out loud and went to get the students to class. Not knowing why, they laughed with me at her too. She was completely silent after that. Maybe that night opened something up because Lily and I started talking more. You're probably wondering if my mom ever blamed my dad, right? Of course she did, but she always told us that my dad was doing something worthwhile and we should support him. So she raised my sister and me on her own, which let my dad stay in the mountains without worrying. I wasn't surprised by what she said. Only a loving family like that could raise someone as open-hearted as Lily. You have no idea. It's a miracle I survived those years with my mom. When I was little, I'd sleep with her and her snoring would keep me up all night. If I managed to nudge her, she'd turn over and nearly squish me. Overcooked noodles were the least of it. One time, she made fried rice with eggs, and the shells were still in there. After school, she'd come to pick me up on her bike. I'd barely sit on the back, and she'd pedal off with a big kick, forgetting me until she got home. Eventually, my grandma took us in for a couple of years. After that, once I started school, I was trailing my sister everywhere with a nose full of snot trailing behind me. So many tears when I remember those days. I couldn't help but laugh at her stories, and she turned away, a bit shy, scratching her head. Time flew by in the small town, and before I knew it, I'd been there for 2 months. Sometimes when I ate at my aunt's place, she'd pull me aside with questions. I see you and Miss Lily getting along well. How's it going between you two? I quickly turned red and clarified, Lily and I are just friends and don't go matchmaking us. Over time, I realized Lily and Mia were completely different people. When I was preparing for self-study exams, Mia dismissed the idea, saying those diplomas weren't worth it and she'd take care of me if I just stayed put. But when Lily saw me pick up a textbook, it was like she could see what I truly wanted. She said, "It's never too late to start doing what you want. You should live life the way you really want to." In town, I hadn't thought about the past much, except when Mia would pop up in the most inconvenient ways. When she called, Lily and I were rushing to Karen's house, the same little boy who gave me peaches in class. The school's resources in the town only went up to middle school. Higher education meant heading to the city. Karen's brother Jack, who was in Mr. Adams' last class and about to enter senior year, had suddenly dropped out and come home. When Lily heard this, she panicked and rushed out immediately. While I was busy settling the students, an unfamiliar number kept calling my phone. I ignored it. When I hurried over to Jack's house, Lily was having a tense conversation with his parents. Jack's grades aren't great. He's not the type for studying, they insisted. In the corner, Jack was crying quietly with his back to us, and Lily spoke urgently. The city schools are more demanding. It's normal to struggle at first. Give him more time. It will get better. What's the point of a rural kid studying so much? Better to start working and help out the family. Lily wasn't deterred. If money's the issue, I'll cover his tuition and living expenses. There's just one more year until his final exams. Let him try. But Jack's parents were set on their decision and didn't budge an inch. Raindrops suddenly started leaking through the black tiles on the roof. The children instinctively grabbed bowls and basins to catch the water. The small, dark, cramped house laid bare their poverty. Feeling defeated, Lily wanted to say more but was already being shown out the door. We hadn't walked far when Jack came running after us. "Miss Lily, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I'm just too dumb. No matter how hard I try, my grades never improve." "I've failed your expectations," Jack said. Lily reassured him with a few words and urged him back inside as the rain poured down harder. She stayed silent the entire way back. I'd never seen her look so down. Her eyes were unfocused, and her voice was low. I always believed that if you worked hard enough, anything was possible. Was I wrong? I tried so hard to help him. I shook my head and shared my thoughts. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just that this might not be what you were expecting. I was once a kid from the mountains who went to study in the city. I know how much extra effort we need to put in to stand on the same starting line as others. It's hard for kids from humble backgrounds to make it big. But those who are determined to climb will cling to even a sliver of hope. But what if the problem lies within the child? For kids who grew up in the mountains, the city is like a whole different world. It's dazzling, colorful, and brutal. You'll see things you never imagined and lifestyles you never dared to dream of. Old clothes, strange accents. They all become reasons to be laughed at. At 15 or 16, our self-esteem grows crazy strong. We can't choose where we're born, but we can control how hard we try. Yet society's resources lean toward the cities. Some are born in Rome, some are born to labor. Even talent is scarce and unevenly distributed. Some gaps just can't be closed no matter how hard you try. The more you hope something will change your destiny, the more you'll fear its approach. Like college entrance exams, for instance. Some kids are strong enough inside to gear up and carve out a future, but those who aren't strong get crushed. Jack might be one of those kids, scared of the exam, of failing, of disappointing his efforts and the expectations of others. So when his parents suggested dropping out, he chose to escape out of fear. If someone regrets it for him later, they have a reason to blame his parents or call it unfair fate. Lily hadn't thought that far and fell deep in thought hearing this. Though her mom wasn't around much when she was little, she had plenty of love and security from her family. She was a bright student, easily got into a top college, and struggled to understand why some find certain questions hard. If you haven't lived it, it's hard to make others understand your empathy. Lily asked me, "Is there really nothing that can be done? If that's the case, would you give up?" I asked her in return. Lily shook her head without hesitation. Looking back at the mountains we came from and the long roads that lead to the bustling city, I suddenly made up my mind and said firmly, "There's a way. I'll go with him." Facing the unknown with a partner makes it less scary. Lily looked at me in surprise, and when our eyes met, I said with conviction, "You're right. We should live as we love. What I want to try most now is going to college. In my past life, I followed Mia wherever she went to take better care of her. Working hard for a living and paying off debts, I barely had time to breathe, let alone think about what I wanted. Once, after a company gathering, Mia, a bit tipsy and stumbling, flushed with drink, said emotionally, "Ben, someday I'm going to start my own company, and you won't have to struggle anymore. What about you? What kind of future do you want?" Her question left me a bit puzzled, with an indescribable sense of loss. Luckily, she didn't press it further, and I shelved it in the back of my mind. After settling in the small town, life slowed down, giving me lots of time to think. But I felt lost because all my life had revolved around Mia's emotions. Now, planning to live for myself, I realized I had no hobbies or desires. Lily told me, "The future isn't something you just think about. You have to try things to know if they're what you want." So, I decided to retake the college entrance exam to experience things I'd never lived through before. But the thought of actually enrolling stumped me. Lily stepped in confidently, taking on the whole issue. "You don't have to worry about this. I'll handle it." She found a restudy school in the city for me, close to the one Jack attends. We went to Jack's house and tried all sorts of ways to persuade his parents to let him go back to school. The day Jack rejoined school, he hugged me at the entrance and cried hard. "I'm so scared I won't pass. Lily spent so much money and effort on me, it'd all be wasted." I patted his back to comfort him. "Many people don't get another chance. We're lucky, so don't give up this time. Be ready to save yourself from the flames again and again." In the intense study sessions, I got a call from Jake. His voice sounded a bit awkward. "Ben, Mia?" He didn't finish before someone grabbed the phone. The voice was shaking. "Ben, where are you? I miss you so much. Just wait a little longer. I'll sort everything out soon. Wait for me." I listened quietly, then interrupted her. "I won't wait for you. We are over, and I don't want you bothering my friends again." I didn't stay in the dorms. Lily rented 2 rooms close to the school and often dropped by with supplies. I convinced Jack to commute daily. After nighttime study sessions, we'd head to the small apartment and review our mistakes together. Honestly, going back to that senior year was a bit tough for me. I hadn't touched academics in years, and my mindset had changed a lot, making it hard to dive in completely. But once I decided to do it, I committed fully. When Mia showed up, I was a bit stunned. She had lost a lot of weight, looking worn out. She hugged me the moment she saw me. Her familiar scent lingered around and her body trembled. "Ben, I've been looking for you like crazy. I thought I'd never see you again in this lifetime." I instinctively pushed her away and looked at her with a frown. "You're married now. This constant clinging to me isn't good." She had tears in her eyes and spilled everything like a stream of beans. "I'm divorced. The E family set us up back then to get our land cheap, leading to my family going bankrupt. My parents sold everything to pay off debts, and the Erics pressured them along with creditors, causing them to die in a car crash. I got close to Ryan just to bring down his family. I never loved him. The one I've always loved is you." She looked at me pleadingly. "Ben, please, do you believe me?" "I do," I nodded, feeling a pang of sadness for my late parents. Mia was overjoyed, wanting to reach for my hand, but I stepped back to avoid it. "Whether you're tired of the hard life or avenging your parents, your choice wasn't wrong, but there's no going back for us. I died once when you chose to marry him. A true death." Mia looked panicked at my indifferent expression. "Ben, I'm begging you to forgive me, okay? Give me another chance. I won't make the same mistake again. You will. I mercilessly exposed her. I was never your first choice. You figured I'd back down for you, so you left me without fear. I started a new company and we have money now. I won't let you suffer again. I'll make you my priority from now on. I can change in any way you want me to. Mia wanted to argue more, but I didn't want to listen anymore. I never felt those days were hard. I'm doing just fine now. Yeah, then. You don't need to change for me, and I don't want to be anyone's second choice anymore. People often don't know what they want, but are sure of what they don't want. In this failed relationship, I clearly know I don't want to be someone who depends on others. Clinging in relationships is a form of parasitism. When Mia didn't want me anymore in the past, it was like I couldn't live. Life is filled with beautiful things beyond just love. One shouldn't focus too single-mindedly on it. It's my fault. I'm the one who wronged you. Can't we ever go back to how it was? She said bitterly. I shook my head. Mia, I've moved on. You should too. For someone I shared 20 years with, I feel no hatred, even when she left me then. There's more sadness. Even if our paths never cross again, I only wish her well. Then you promised you'd never leave me, that you'd stay with me forever. I chuckled bitterly, looking at her with some sadness. Believe it or not, I did stay with you a lifetime once, but that lifetime had too tragic an ending. When Mia left looking lost, I noticed Lily standing not too far away. I didn't know how long she'd been there, but the flowers in her hand were wilting. Karen wanted me to give these to you, Lily said, a bit awkwardly. I took the flowers and smiled in response. Finally saying goodbye to the past felt really good. Feeling reborn felt even better. Time flew by, and soon it was time for the exams. On the day results were announced, Lily was more nervous than the two of us. Jack and I did well, just making it past the required scores. Lily was so excited she was about to cry. I teased her. You're always so tearful. I just can't help it. At that moment, she truly understood her father's choice back then. That sense of mission to help others change their fate made her resolutely follow Mr. Adams' path. Jack applied to a school out of town with loans for tuition and Lily supporting him with living expenses. After that, she continued teaching and took on private projects for extra income. I chose a university in the provincial capital. Before heading off, Lily came to me with a thick envelope. Just enjoy college life there. Don't worry about part-time work. There's plenty of time for that later. If you need money, just let me know. I'll support you. I joked. Aren't you afraid I'll take your money and never come back? As long as you're happy, does it really matter if you come back? Even as she said it, the way she clutched the envelope gave her away. She wouldn't admit it, and I didn't press. She wouldn't speak up to influence my decisions, yet she hoped I'd return. During our time in the small town, many destinies quietly changed. Lily hadn't planned to stay long, and I was there briefly. We ended up changing our minds. After college, I returned to the small town. This time, I didn't plan on leaving again. Not just me, but Jack and other kids who left the town schools returned in various ways, building roads, houses, factories, and bridges, supporting local tourism using local resources, bridging with businesses to promote local industry and create jobs. More people who left for work away returned to the town, all doing their part for their hometown. More children filled the town again, and many young teachers joined the school. Lily and I stayed here all along. On the day I returned, Lily awkwardly asked, "Why choose to come back?" I wrapped my arms around her and teased, looking at her flushed ears. Because this is what I want in life. You want every child to have an education, and I want every father to be able to come home.